When the world trembles and crowds flee toward the noise of urgency, there are places that do not collapse. They awaken. Places that most abandon because they cannot hear their own thoughts without the comfort of the collective trance. Places where the silence is not empty, but alive. In moments of collapse, when the rush reveals its absurdity and the spectacle falters, the truth rises like dust settling after a storm. We have always feared the quiet corners where our essence hides. The modern world taught us to run, not to return, to accumulate noise, not presence, to seek screens, not soul. But there are 6 places that transform into fortresses when everyone evacuates. 6 sanctuaries ignored by a society addicted to distraction. 6 territories where the spirit reclaims its throne once the crowd vanishes and the echo of chaos finally breaks open for revelation. The first fortress appears where the crowd once roared, the empty room. The space stripped of people, furniture, noise, and movement. A room with nothing left but air and the weight of your own breathing. Modern life taught us to fear emptiness because emptiness strips away the lies. In an empty room, every object removed is a truth returned. Every silence is a mirror. You realize how heavy your life has become, not when you look at your shelves, but when you stand in a space where nothing demands your attention. The empty room becomes a fortress because it protects you from the world's addiction to accumulation. It whispers what no advertisement dares to admit. The less you carry, the more you become. When everyone evacuates, the room stops being a room. It becomes a threshold, an initiation, a doorway to the self uncluttered. The second fortress emerges in the place society taught us to ignore: solitude. When people run toward noise, fleeing from their own reflection, solitude deepens, expands, and transforms into a sanctuary. Alone, you hear the truth the crowd drowns. Alone, you see the patterns you've repeated out of habit, fear, or borrowed desire. We live in a civilization terrified of being alone because solitude exposes the emptiness behind the constant pursuit of approval. Yet solitude is the birthplace of everything real: clarity, courage, authenticity, inner rebellion, spiritual grounding. When the world evacuates, solitude stops being a wound and becomes armor. It becomes the homeland of the few who no longer fear themselves, a place where you meet the version of you that the world never had the patience to discover. The third fortress rises in the forgotten landscape of slow time, the space where minutes stretch, where hours breathe, where life unfolds without urgency. When everyone evacuates toward the illusion of efficiency, speed becomes their cage and slowness becomes your refuge. Slow time reveals the insanity of a culture that confuses movement with meaning. In slow time, the mind stops shaking. The heartbeat descends from panic to presence. The world, once blurry, gains focus. You begin to notice the rhythm of light on the floor, the texture of silence between each breath, the way your thoughts soften when they are not being chased by obligations invented by a system built on exhaustion. Slow time becomes a fortress because no one can invade what moves at the pace of consciousness. When everyone evacuates, slowness becomes sacred. The fourth fortress appears in a place that terrifies the modern ego: nature untouched, unfiltered, uncurated for aesthetics or consumption. When the world evacuates into digital kingdoms and artificial realities, nature becomes sovereign again. The forest, the mountain, the desert, the ocean, these places do not beg for attention. They demand presence. They do not entertain. They awaken. Nature is the only realm not built to please the human eye. It exists beyond us and therefore liberates us from ourselves. When you step into nature while the world is fleeing, you rediscover scale. You are small, temporary, a brief flicker in an ancient story. And paradoxically, that humility becomes strength. Nature becomes a fortress because it dissolves the illusions that weaken us. It strips away vanity. It reminds you that you are not the center of existence, and in that realization lies profound peace. The fifth fortress rises in the silence that follows abandonment, the kind of silence that vibrates like a hidden frequency beneath the chaos of daily life. When everyone evacuates, silence reveals itself as the most misunderstood power of the human experience. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of meaning. It sharpens perception. It cuts through illusion. It acts as a shield against manipulation, against the collective panic, against the noise that colonizes the modern mind. In silence, the truth becomes audible. You are exhausted not from work, but from distraction, not from the weight of tasks, but from the weight of pretending. Silence becomes a fortress because it protects the mind from the violence of excess stimuli. It becomes a cathedral of awareness in a civilization terrified of listening. The sixth fortress emerges in the forgotten sanctuary of inner life, the mind uncluttered, the heart unguarded, the consciousness awake. When everyone evacuates outward, searching for escape, entertainment, distraction, validation, you turn inward, and the inward path becomes unshakable. The world collapses, but the inner world rises. A fortress built not of walls, but of wisdom, not of stone, but of presence. In the inner life, you discover what society has tried to bury beneath possessions, performance, and noise. Your original clarity, your authentic voice, your buried intuition, your quiet strength. The inner world becomes a fortress because no external force can conquer what is rooted in awareness. When these 6 places stand strong and the world dissolves into urgency, a new understanding emerges. Everything we fear in times of evacuation are the very things we desperately need. The empty room. Solitude, slow time, nature, silence, the inner world. These places are not voids, they are sources. They are not escapes, they are returns. They are not losses, they are liberations. You begin to see the paradox clearly. We spend our lives accumulating things that weaken us and avoiding spaces that would set us free. The modern world is rich in possessions and poor in presence, heavy in objects and hollow in meaning. When everyone evacuates, you finally see the architecture of truth beneath the ruins of illusion. And as you step deeper into these fortresses, a quiet rebellion grows inside you, a rebellion against the demands that drained your soul. A rebellion against the idea that you must always be available, productive, connected, fast, impressive. You begin to reclaim your time, your breath, your peace. You begin to live with less but feel more, do less but experience more, seek less but understand more. You begin to realize that the true collapse was never outside, it was inside, and the reconstruction begins in simplicity. In the end, the world may flee, the noise may escalate, the chaos may reign, but you stand in the places that do not shake. You stand where strength is born, in the quiet, in the slow, in the empty, in the natural, in the inner. And from these fortresses, you understand a truth that transforms everything. The world evacuates because it fears what you have learned to face. And the revolution begins, not when you conquer the world, but when you choose the places the world avoids. There, in the sanctuaries abandoned by the crowd, you become unbreakable. There, you return to the essential. There, you rediscover yourself. And there, in that silent and sacred simplicity, you finally become free.